Welcome back to Landing Zone Home. Today we're going to do something I've been waiting a long time to do. It's an upgrade to my off-grid solar system. I reached out to Victron Energy and they graciously provided me with a battery monitor, a BMV-712 Smart, which is going to really enhance my system and allow me to more accurately determine the state of charge on my batteries. Now, I'm going to put a link right up here to a video where I did a test for my off-grid system providing power to my recreational vehicle. And that test failed completely. I was going to run it for a week. After 3 days, I kept seeing the battery voltage going down each day to the point where I was concerned my batteries were going to be damaged. So I stopped that test and I did some analysis, and I didn't know if I needed more batteries, if I needed more solar panels, and to this day I really don't know. I don't know if what I have is sufficient or not. I suspect it might be, but I'm going to rerun that test utilizing this Victron battery monitor, and I think I'm going to now fully understand how my off-grid solar system is performing. So stick around for that. Just using the display on the charge controller to determine the battery level, or I should say the battery state of charge, was a pretty crude, low-tech way of monitoring that. So I'll be rerunning my test in a future video, but today's video is going to talk about the installation of this battery monitor. In the box, we have some documentation. We have a RJ11 cable, which connects the monitor itself back to the shunt. We have a couple of power cables, which will go, I'll use one of these, which will go from the shunt to the positive terminal on the battery bank. Here's the monitoring unit. Just has that one connection for RJ11 on the back. The shunt. And it says it's 500 amp. And they're labeled this side to battery, this side to load and charger. Then I believe the last thing here is just an installation bezel and some screws. Some safety precautions before I get into the battery box and start working. I do have a face shield that I put on. I don't have a watch or a necklace or something like that that could possibly make an accidental connection between some of the battery cables and the termination points. I have tried doing this with gloves, which is another safety item, but I found myself to be a little more clumsier with gloves than I am with bare hands. So I just take extra precaution, take my time, but gloves, they're just not for me. So before I do any of the installation steps, I want to go through my strategy on how and where I'm going to install the Victron battery monitor. So I've taken the front of my battery box off to give me full access, and the shunt is connected to the negative cable going to your negative bus. That's this cable right here. So my strategy is to mount the shunt somewhere along in here, making one cut, and the negative cable putting on new terminators, and that should take care of that. Now, as to where I'll place the monitor itself, I'm thinking I would like to put it in this area. Here's my charge controller. Here's the display panel for the inverter. So I'm thinking about putting the Victron monitor somewhere up in here. put the new terminators on the battery cables, I use this crimping tool that I purchased off of Amazon. I looked it over, I can't find a name for it, but it is a hydraulic crimping tool. Relatively inexpensive, $30 or $40 at the most maybe, but it comes with a large assortment of dies for your different wire gauge. I'm using 1/0 battery cable here, so I've got the dies in for that. So I'm going to crimp on the connector. Okay, just to give you a look at the final installation here. This went relatively easy. The only difficult part was when I modified my battery cables and put the new termination lugs on there. They weren't large enough for the bolts, so I had to drill those out in order for the shunt bolts to fit through them. But here's the little power termination right here. Then you can see the coiled up RJ11 that goes up. Then I'll show you where I put that, and that is right here. This was relatively easy. It took I have a set of hole saws, and it took the 2-inch is what worked perfectly. And because of I have limited access to the back of this mounting board here, I did not use the screw-on fastener on the back of this. I just put the bezel plate on the front, and it's holding it pretty secure. So it's going through, and it's captured my data now, the voltage, the amperage that's coming in off of the solar, the wattage coming in off the solar, amp hours has not changed yet. I'm guessing after a first hour or so that should start to increment, either show you the amp hours that are being put into the batteries, or if they're being taken out of the batteries, they'll be preceded by a minus sign. And the battery is showing 100%. I think that's the default, that you have to go through a synchronization process for it to really understand the state of your battery. And you can't do that until your batteries are fully charged. My batteries they're in absorbed state now, and they're still taking 18 amps. So here at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just hoping I can get up to float state, which would indicate that the batteries are topped off, and at that point I'll do the synchronization on the Victron here. Infinite life, because there has no load on it right now, so it doesn't know how long the batteries will last. I do not have the temperature sensor. From what I've read, that's a different item you have to purchase. And we're back to volts. And a final piece to this is setting up the application on your smartphone, which proved to be very easy. Just download the app, and when you open the app up, it's going to go through and do a search for devices, and it will find your Victron Energy battery monitor. When you click on that device, it's going to come up and query you for a PIN number. Just use the default that's in the user's manual, which is 6 zeros, and then it'll connect right up to your device. I had already completed the Victron battery monitor installation, and I got to doing a little more research, and I found out that indeed, not only is there an app for your smartphone, but there's also an app for PCs and Mac OS operating systems. So I downloaded the app for my MacBook Air, and I wanted to record some of that and give you a demonstration of that. So let's walk through some of this. So I'm going to launch the Victron app on my MacBook Air. And I'm right now about 20 feet from the device. So I've tested this before, and the Bluetooth does have a pretty reasonable range. All right, there's my device right there, the BMV. Doing the connect. And here's the live status. So I'll walk you through a little bit of this on the screen because it looks exactly like it does on the smartphone, but you get your status here. And I've learned a little more about this because it's been up 2 nights now, and I've seen how it's responded over the night when there's been no solar, and how it handles the load that I have on there. So it is right now about 11:20 in the morning. It's still replenishing from the night before. It's taken in right here 15.6 amps. It's what it's putting into the battery. And let's look at the history here, because the history is getting more interesting to me. That the last discharge overnight, it drew 52 amp hours off of the battery. So that's something very critical to know right there. And over the course of the 2 nights that I've had this online, it's drawn 115 amp hours cumulatively out of the batteries. Another thing here is last time since full charge. It's showing right now 18 hours and 42 minutes. That would have been late yesterday afternoon. We did end up the day with some cloudiness, and I don't think, I think by 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, the solar draw was so low that it went into MPPT or bulk mode, and it never got back up to full charge. So that's why it's showing 18 hours. And it's had one synchronization. In just a moment, I'll show you a change that I made to that synchronization voltage, and I hope it's going to be beneficial to what I'm doing here. And then again, back on the trends, you can see how your trend is currently going. It's holding with a steady voltage of just over 27 volts. Now, clicking this little cog gear here, you can actually go in and make some changes to your settings. I'll click on battery, and when you do the setup, you'll have to set your battery capacity. Mine is 310 amp hours, so that's something you will have to do on the initial setup. Charge voltage right here is defaulted to 26.4 volts, and I did some research and found that it should be about 0.3 volts lower than your float voltage. So my float voltage was 27.4, and this is for a 24 volt system. I apologize for not telling you that earlier. I do not have a 12 volt system. I have a 24 volt system. And that's the only change I made here. And then if you want to manually synchronize, you can do that right here from this screen. You can set your alarms, and I have mine set for a low state of charge alarm at 60%. I know with lead acid batteries, 50% is the absolute minimum you want to go to. Well, I'm a little more conservative than that because I have a lot of money invested into my batteries. So I've set mine for 60%, and I have low voltage alarm set at 24.5 volts, which again, if you have one of the charts, that'll show that's about 60% discharge there. And that is it for this neat app for my MacBook Air. And if you have a Windows type PC, you can go and get the download for that. And these applications are free. So I hope you use those. I'm really enjoying this, and that just about wraps it up for this video. Really happy with this. Victron, thank you for sending this out. I'm going to put it through its paces when I do a separate video on running my load test for the RV, and that'll be the next video coming up. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and ring the little bell. I'll be having 2 more solar videos coming out in the next week, so stay tuned for those. And until next time, thanks for watching.